welcome to my kitchen. I thought I'd do something different tonight. Instead of talking about my books and just, doing like I did with the podcast interview and, answering questions, I thought I'd invite you in and talk about my books while I made a pie. Well, okay, it's not exactly a pie. I'm quite trim by comparison. I used to be 320 pounds about a year and a half ago. I do a low carb thing. I do not recommend this as a thing for everybody. Don't try to follow what I do and lose weight that way, because it isn't for everybody. This is a choice that I've made, and it's a permanent one, not a diet. Everything I do is revolved around it, and lo and behold, 193 pounds today. So what we're making today is tarts, sort of. Basically going to fill this with apple filling, and we're going to use a very small amount of store-bought pastry to put on top of it. Cook it, freeze it into bars, and it basically makes sort of an apple pie ice cream. I really like it. It's just something that works for me. And I can't really have regular apple pie if I want to keep my weight where it is. So this is my solution. That being said, that's not why we're here. I want to talk to you about public domain superheroes and what all's going on there and what I'm doing and what I've been doing, and encourage you to ask questions. I'm going to cut this video up a little bit so it's not, you're not going to watch 45 minutes of me peeling apples, but I thought it would be interesting to see what happens if we tried something a little bit sort of interactive, even though I can't interact with you right now. So if you're watching this right now, in the comments, ask your questions anytime. The next video I make, I will do my best to answer them. So here we go. I have 5 apples. I prefer Macintosh. I like Macintosh apples. They give a nice tart pie rather than a sweet appley flavor. I use my favorite little device. It's the world's best apple peeler. I've tried a couple of different ones, and this one works better than all the others, except for the fact that I didn't take the little safety thing off. There we go. And this guy rips through that in no time at all, and we've got a peeled apple. Now, I've forgotten to pull out some plates to put my stuff on here as I'm going. In this case, I'm using 5 large apples to make enough filling for 8 little tartlets. And it doesn't sound like much, but they're big apples. And I made a previous round with 6 apples from this same bushel, and that was more than enough. So 5 is going to be great. Should be just enough. Sometimes this little machine chooses to make a mockery of the apple peeling process, but that's okay. So, in public domain superheroes right now, I'm writing something called Never Mind. Never Mind is my follow-up to January's release of Say the Magic Word, which was my debut of my version of Captain Marvel. And this time, I'm going to be following up and adding some new dimensions to some characters that I introduced in that first book. In that first book, I introduced Billy's family. So you met Mary Marvel, you met Uncle Dudley, you met Uncle Dudley's girlfriend Tony, and you met their best friend Freddie Freeman, who, if you're at all familiar with the comics, you'll know that Freddie eventually becomes Captain Marvel Jr., and Mary eventually becomes Mary Marvel. Well, they didn't in the first book. All that we had in the first book was Billy Batson getting his powers. Now, at the end of the first book, there was a hint that perhaps Mary and Freddie might well get some powers down the line, because they were able to summon the power of Shazam. Even if they didn't actually get the power, they were able to summon it and transfer that power into Billy. Isn't that great? 5 apples in 35 seconds? So, Billy is Captain Marvel. Billy Batson is a girl. Don't forget. It's very important. I've changed that. And I've done that intentionally because, again, when it comes to everything I'm doing in public domain superheroes, there's a lot of boring white men in the superhero sort of family. Not all of them need to be changed. You know, I don't necessarily have plans to change Batman particularly much from the way he is. I use Spy Smasher pretty much exactly the way he is. There's no need to change every single one, and I'm not doing it because there's an agenda or because I have, you know, any particular sort of thing that I want to push. I just look around me, and this life that we live together on this planet is full of all kinds of people. And not all of them are white, not all of them are men. And why would I want to write 200 superheroes that are all guys and all white and all boring? To me, that just seems like a waste. So, I've changed that up a little bit. If you've been following along, if you bought any of my books, please, thank you, love that. If you're at all aware of how I do things, you'll know that Freddy was born Alfreda, and Freddy also has a limb difference. Freddy was born without his left leg above the knee, and he wears a prosthetic leg. What you might not know, because I haven't actually done any detail work with this yet, is that in universe, there's another hero who has a limb difference, a guy by the name of Hop Harrigan. I pair him with Spy Smasher. Hop Harrigan was created in the 1940s. He's an ace pilot. And again, another one that I've basically used exactly as he was, except for the limb difference. In the case of Hop Harrigan, I looked at the name and I thought, okay, why do they call him Hop? And I couldn't find anything that told me why the name Hop, other than Hop had to do with his flying between places. So little short hops. To me, that seemed really lame. And as you already know, I'm looking for ways to change heroes so that there's a little bit more balance, a little bit more real life sort of census among my superheroes. I don't want just white men, and I don't want just straight people. I don't want just women. I want this to be a universe full of heroes that reflects the world we live in. And doesn't mean that every hero is going to be gay, doesn't mean every hero is going to be trans, doesn't mean that I'm going to be, I never write romance, and you can count on take that to the bank. I can't write romance to save my life. Basically I've approached all of the sort of girl-boy relationship stuff in this world as the same as the way they did it in the 40s in the serials. Basically, when it comes to talking about love and sex, there's a wink and a nod, and that's the end of it. There's no, they just didn't, it was part of what's called the Hays Code. They weren't allowed to do a lot of things that we take for granted in the modern storytelling world. There was no nudity, there was very little public affection, there was hardly any, not even kissing and hugging. It just wasn't it wasn't done very much. So I'm perfect with that, because in terms of writing, that stuff is not what I'm interested in writing about. And like I said, I'm not real good at writing it. I like writing about adventure and fun and fights and good and evil and all that other stuff that drives the comic book type story. So that's where we're at. So this month I'm writing, as I said, I'm writing Nevermind. So I hope you check it out. It'll be published at the end of March, early April, usually first week, sometimes earlier, depends on how things go. In terms of last month, you might or might not be familiar with my recent release, and I love this book. I think this book is the best thing I've done since I started. It's called The Rock of Eternity, The Challenger Papers. And Challenger is Professor Challenger, Professor George Edward Challenger, created by none other than Arthur Conan Doyle, he who created Sherlock Holmes. And Challenger is one of those more obscure characters that sort of rides the coattails of a more famous rival. When it comes to Arthur Conan Doyle, you say that name and everybody thinks Sherlock Holmes. But Challenger to me is just a little bit more interesting because he's not a cop, he's not an investigator, he's not a detective. He's an adventurer, and you get right down to it. Challenger, there's an argument to be made, is the prototype for Indiana Jones. He was a professor, an adventurer, went on crazy adventures in the Amazon, found dinosaurs in the Lost World. He shares a lot of DNA with the Indiana Jones type, and that attracted me to him right away because I happen to love that stuff. Shock. And so that was when it came time to start thinking about how to explain all this stuff that's going on in my universe. I needed a way so that you, who've never, you just come to this new, you've maybe read one or two books, you don't know all of what I've got planned or how I'm working everything or what the mechanisms are that drive all this. And it's fine for me to say, oh, it's interconnected and it's all four houses and this, that, and the other thing, but that's a lot. This book, what it does that none of the others do, is it takes the three basic pillars of my universe and it lays them out. Challenger's adventures in the story are divided into three distinct moments. There's three distinct sets of events that happen to him over the course of the story, and as they happen, he also has been gifted or cursed, depending on how you want to look at it, with a repository of alien knowledge that he didn't ask for, doesn't want, and can't control, but it basically helps him to explain to you, the reader, how all this works. And so every time he runs into a magic thing or a science thing or an alien thing or whatever, he has a memory come back to him. I keep pointing at you with the knife, I'm sorry. He has a memory come back to him that explains or informs that portion of what's going on. And so as you go through the book, as you read through the book, every time Challenger runs up against a new event, not only is he having an adventure, but the information that comes out of that explains how public domain superheroes runs, how it works, how all of the history, all of the science, all of the magic all fit together so that when you're reading another story, when you're reading Swords in the House of Horus or Dr. Satan and the Element of Evil or whatever, Shadows of Tanagara, you will sort of feel like the clockwork is clicking into place with that. Each of those stories has elements, obviously, of the universe in them. And each of those stories has intentionally only parts of that story. I don't give you in every single, in every book, I don't give you the whole story. Even in The Rock of Eternity, you don't get absolutely, it's not a textbook. You're not getting a lesson about how my universe works. But I thought that this had gotten so complicated, and I get so excited when I'm explaining this to people, that perhaps it was time to give the audience a way to understand it without me droning on about it for 20 minutes so that you get it. You can read this book, you can read The Rock of Eternity, and from that point on, everything else that you read in the universe will make just that much more sense. That being said, if you've already read 3 books and you haven't read Rock of Eternity yet, don't panic. There's no chronological order here. I don't have it set up so that you have to read book 1, book 2, book 3. No. You don't have to do that at all. You read, in fact, if you're, let's say, a horror fan, you could read just the horror books in my universe and never read anything else, and that would be fine. You will get, eventually, as I write more of them, you will get the whole story through that as well, just in a different way than you would if you read everything else. Believe me, I'm not saying just read those books. Read everything. Got to read everything. But if you're a particular fan of a particular genre, I have a friend who is a science fiction fan, only reads my science fiction novels, and I keep telling him he's missing the bigger picture, and he doesn't care. He likes the science fiction, and that's what he likes to read, so that's what he reads, and that's perfectly okay. He's getting enough out of it that he understands how it works and what's going on. He is missing some of the nuance. He's missing some of the history. He's missing some of the fun adventure with other characters. But that's fine. He's a science fiction guy, and I write science fiction, and he enjoys my science fiction. So there you go. Now, somebody asked me the other day, they're like, well, what about this whole no multiverse thing? How do you plan on ever changing that? Or is there like, is that a hard and fast rule? What's the deal? And to answer that person's question, it is a hard and fast rule. There are no other dimensions. There are no other versions of my heroes floating around. There's never going to be a sort of, folded into the DC Comics universe when those characters become public domain. My characters are used exclusively in my universe. And the reason I do it that way is simple. I can control everything. And that, to me, is far more important than any one character getting brought back from the dead or whatever the case may be, just for story purposes. There are so many characters in the public domain, and who will be in the public domain eventually, that even big names, even huge characters like Sherlock Holmes and others of that sort of gravity live, die, and don't come back. There's no reason that if I need an investigator, I don't have to pull Sherlock Holmes out of the Victorian era or the Edwardian era and pull him forward to 1962 in some weird magic way, dimensional, uses, his other dimensional doppelganger, whatever, just to satisfy a story. There are other investigators, there are other heroes that can fill that role. And Sherlock Holmes lives in a particular time and space in the universe. He does, by the way, not yet, but read Rock of Eternity. You might see an allusion to a certain detective showing up one day, entirely on the schedule. He's on the board. There is a board, and that was the other question I had the other day. Was, is there really a board? Yes, there's really a board. Actually, there's three. They're 3 cork boards, and they're full to bursting of index cards with things like planetary dynamics and character histories and plot ideas and character pairings that I plan to do and all kinds of other stuff. It's a wall of crazy. I actually do have bundles and balls of yarn. I haven't actually done it yet, but there are balls of yarn in reserve for the day that I'm ready to do the wall of crazy, which I'm going to have to pretty soon, quite honestly, because the board has gotten to the point where it's almost too large for the single easel that I have it sitting on. So, where the heck was I? Oh yes. So yes, there is no multiverse. There is no time travel. There is no going back. There's no coming back from the dead. Now, that being said, I have an immortal villain. Vivectus and Victor and Vladimir are all the same guy. Sorry to spoil that for you, but they are. And that's just how it is. There are long-lived aliens. There are aliens who will have lifespans that run hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Why? Well, for 2 reasons. one, like I said, there's no multiverse. So if I want to have X superhero with a big name that I'm not going to use until he or she is public domain, but I want to have them have an adventure with Cull of Atlantis or Conan the Barbarian or King Arthur or whoever, but also show up in 1973, I have to do it that way. And I'm okay with that because there's good reasons and precedent in the lore of these characters for them to be long-lived or even immortal, depending on which version of them you read. So I have done exactly that. I've considered all the ramifications, and rather than have some characters, some heroes will be generational. There will be mantles that get passed. There will be heroes who start with a familiar face, and one day their son, their godson, their daughter, their niece, nephew, their, whatever, their second cousin twice removed, ends up taking up that mantle. That is entirely possible, and that will happen. Sticky apples. Pardon me for a sec. So, when that does happen, certain characters that you're familiar with will show up in different ways. There will be some characters, like I say, who are legacy, and they have legacy, and they come back again and again because, A, they're lots of fun, B, some of them have it baked in. The Phantom is a perfect example. The Phantom is actually built as a legacy character. I'm going to honor that. I have absolutely plans to do exactly that, no question. The Phantom will be a legacy character. Cinnamon, vital ingredient. Got to have cinnamon. And you'll notice I'm not particularly spending a lot of time measuring. I got a vague idea of how much cinnamon I need, and that's enough. And that is cinnamon. Wait till I do the sugar. Sugar, again, like I said, low carb thing. This is Splenda. This is a sugar-free blend. It's basically fake sugar plus brown sugar, and I've used it for this particular recipe 3 or 4 times, and it's perfect. It's fantastic. You'd never know. I'd serve it to you, you'd never know. You would never know that there was anything different about it other than it being brown sugar. Now, so, where were we? Oh, yes. So, going back a bit in time, talking about the legacy characters. Another one that came up during the podcast was the Spider. Now, the Spider's fun and interesting because for a couple of reasons. Not only am I a fan, I like the Spider. He's fun. I call him Dexter of the Depression. He basically went around and killed bad guys, and that's what he did, and he did it a lot and with impunity. Never gets caught. The cops seem to just kind of shrug shoulders and let him. They never seem to catch up to him, even though it's fairly obvious in the books who he is, and any cop with his salt should have figured it out quite a long time ago that Richard Wentworth is always nearby when criminals die. So anyway, but I'm not terribly interested in a Dexter-like character. I don't really need a killer like that in my universe, particularly. My universe is, let's not say kid-friendly, but my universe is sort of PG-13. Yeah, people die, and there are occasionally some gruesome things that happen, but in general, I stay away from that stuff. I'm not terribly interested in, shock factor violence. It doesn't do much for me. I like a good fight. I like a good choreographed fight. I'm all in for that. And I will happily, enjoy a good choreographed fight. And I will definitely have a lot of them happen in the universe. But the straight up killer part doesn't really do much for me. I don't need that particularly. I leave that to the villains, and the villains do the killing as a rule. There is no, I don't really have a hard and fast no killing rule for my heroes. I tend to think that the comic book no killing rule for Batman and Superman is a bit naive. If there's a guy like the Joker who's going to just keep escaping and killing people, maybe he needs to die. I'm not saying that it's necessarily a moral black and white thing, but I can see my version of Batman being, at a point where he gets fed up with Joker, and that's that. Will that happen? I don't know. I haven't gotten down that road yet. Batman's still a long way off, folks. Batman is 2035. So January 1st, 2035. If you're wondering, I already know what the story's called. I already know how Batman starts, finishes, everything. I already have Batman well planned out. The Joker doesn't happen in the first year. He's actually the following year. So my first few Batman stories won't necessarily involve the Joker. I plan on doing, a lot with him. But by that time, there's also going to be an awful lot of other heroes in the universe out in the world. I mean, if I'm putting out a book a month between now and 2035, that's 9 years. 12 books, 9 years. Let's do the math. That's 90. That's 108 books. So 108 books is, how many characters is that? I mean, even at a conservative one character introduced per book, that's, well over 150 characters by the time Batman rolls around. So will I be doing a Batman novel every month that year? No, I won't be. These characters, the universe will have its stars, and some of them may surprise me. Maybe people will like my take on characters I don't expect. I hope so. I really do. That would be fantastic. In terms of volume, even Superman, even Batman will be entering a universe that's fully fleshed out with characters like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and John Carter of Mars and the Flame and superheroes like Captain Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr. and Ibis and Bullet Man and Bullet Girl and Doll Man and a whole bunch of others that are already public domain that I haven't got to yet. So there's an awful lot going to be in the way of seeing, a Superman book every single week or every single month. It will not be that easy. Need butter. So when it comes to that stuff, Superman and Batman are entering a fully fleshed out world. That's kind of the point of all this, is that, there will be a full universe waiting, ready to go, already populated, already humming, already with backstory and mechanics and mechanisms and history and future plans and magic baked in with a system, and all of this stuff is all going to be sitting here waiting for Superman and Batman when they arrive. That's why I did this. That's why this exists. That's why public domain superheroes exists in the first place. I have built this specifically because I don't want Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey to be Superman's legacy. When Superman becomes public domain in 2034, maybe it won't be me. Maybe there's going to be somebody else who's going to do something even cooler than what I'm doing. I can't say that there's, I don't know. Maybe there will be. And I kind of hope there will be. I would love to read somebody else's take on what's going to happen. But what I promise you is that assuming I live that long, and assuming I financially survive that long, that's key. That means it's up to you guys. You got to buy some books here. Got to keep the lights on around here, right? I'm not going to survive if you don't buy books. But assuming I keep the lights on, and assuming that I'm around to welcome Superman to the universe, and I'm around to welcome Batman and Wonder Woman and Captain America, and going forward, I've got plans for James Bond. Okay, which is he was created in 1954, so he's going to be public domain in 2049. I have plans for James Bond. I have plans for Godzilla. James Bond's 1953, Godzilla's 1954. You get what I mean. I've got this mapped out all the way through to 2051, which is public domain date of 1955. The last two characters who I feel are in the golden age of superheroes. Martian Manhunter and Crypto the Superdog. After them, everybody else that gets created past 1955 is what I would consider Silver Age. So the Silver Age Flash, the heroes like Adam Strange, all the Marvel heroes, Fantastic Four, all that stuff is all Silver Age. Very sci-fi based rather than Golden Age pulp based like the Golden Age heroes that I'm working with. So I'm not making this up as I actually am making this up as I go along, but I'm not making it up as I go along in terms of just throwing it out there. I got this all mapped out. I know what I want to do with all this. You might not like what I'm doing, and that's okay. You don't have to read it. You don't have to buy it. You don't have to enjoy it. I don't care. If it's not for you, fantastic. Go rate something that is. And I'll read it. I would love to. Fantastic. Tell me all about it. I can't wait. But if you're liking what I'm doing, if you like the idea of a universe that welcomes public domain heroes when they come for the next 25 years, all you got to do, go buy a book. I'll write more. I write one a month. There's one coming every month. And if you like one, I promise you'll like the next one. And the one after that, and the one after that. And you don't have to read them all. You don't have to buy them all. I don't expect that. It's fine. Find some that you enjoy. Buy a couple. Buy things that you enjoy. Tell me about it. Most importantly, review it on Amazon. Amazon works on this weird algorithm thing, and if you don't review it, they don't even know you exist, and they don't factor your liking it into putting it in front of other people. So if you want to help me survive, which I really hope you do, if you want to help me survive, yes, buy books. Yes, please review them at Amazon. But also, comment in the comments below some of your questions. Just about ready to go. I'm not sure if it's actually still recording. I got a little flash there saying it was maybe at the end of its life. If that happens, well, that's okay. But if not, just putting on a little bit of pastry on top of these, and we're going to pop them in the oven. And you'll notice I'm not paying a lot of attention to portion size or anything else. I am just putting some pastry on here to fit. Because what I do is once these are cooked, I put them in the freezer. And they hang together as a single unit frozen. Pop them out of this little thing that I've got here full of apple. And what I end up with are these little bars of apple flavored ice cream almost. Not quite, but it's similar in flavor and similar in texture to ice cream. It really is. And it eats like an ice cream bar. And for a guy on trying to keep his weight down and keep his weight under control, I can't tell you how great it is to be able to have some apple pie in my diet. It's a big damn deal for me. So there you go. They're not pretty. I don't make pretty. I make very tasty.